Welcome to On the Line. I'm Jenny Robb. Today we continue our series featuring Frank Giampaolo, a best-selling author, award-winning international coach, a leader of our industry, especially when it comes to helping parents, educating parents, and the dynamic between the player and the parent and the coach. So Frank, thank you for being here. Today we're going to talk about chapter 9. Very excited about chapter 9. The title is Frustration Tolerance. And your quote is, "A better mindset cultivates better results." So we were talking a bit before about how this chapter is kind of quick and to the point. It's concise, but yet so important in the big scheme of things, tennis and life. So Frank, let's talk a little bit about frustration tolerance.
Well, thanks. Thank you for everything, Jenny, first of all, and thanks everybody that's clicking in to listen to these things. But frustration really stems from your athlete's inability to stay focused in the moment, right? So it's with present moment awareness that's so important. And when athletes are upset about past issues, whether it's a past mistake or confusion with the score or line call, even when they're upset about the past, that really brings on the frustration.
Yes.
And then on the other side, when they're anxious about the future and they kind of leave their performance frame of mind and they have an outcome frame of mind, right? That typical worry really makes it very frustrating for athletes. So they're not just controlling the ball, they're controlling their wandering mind.
That's right.
And so that's going to really help. We're going to cover that a lot, I think, in this chapter, but
yes,
that's the concept.
Thank you for that. The first section is called Understanding Frustration. You say frustration is a negative emotion that stands in the way of many athletes' outcome goals. It is a recurring feeling of annoyance stemming from the inability to solve problems. Ideally, tennis problems that arise in the heat of battle should have preset solutions. Again, that gets straight to the point, and it's such an important point. we all get frustrated.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody, so these are I love that we start with just understanding what it is.
Right on.
So understanding frustration, you go on to say the ability to deal with frustration is known as frustration tolerance. A low frustration tolerance doesn't have to be permanent. And I think that's really important because you made the point that if someone is easily frustrated for whatever the trigger may be, you can rewire that. It doesn't mean that player or parent or coach, for that matter, it doesn't mean that you have to stay that way. This is something that you can train,
Yes.
And that's so important. So let's see. Yeah, you say a low frustration tolerance doesn't have to be permanent.
Right on.
So talk a little bit about how, if someone comes to you and they have a very low frustration tolerance, how do you start to retrain that thinking?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And to me, I would start with trying to identify what are their reoccurring nightmares, which is what is frustrating them week in, week out at tournaments, right? So I would have athletes start even before my first session with sending me match notes, and we used to call them match logs back in the day, but this is where they just, after every match of the tournament, right, they write down 3 things they did well, 3 things that they didn't do well. And then maybe they played 3 or 4 matches in the weekend. main draw, second draw. So 3 or 4 matches. So they have like 3 or 4 different notes, and they're going to text that to me or whoever their mental coach is, right?
Mhm.
And then we start to work on like presetting their software solutions.
Mhm.
And so obviously we know that tennis coaches on court are really trying hard to preset habits with stroke production, cleaner stroke habits.
Mhm.
But winning or losing in matches often stems from the software.
Mhm.
And so if there are reoccurring issues, like some people, for example, some athletes, they have issues with different scoring systems, or
Right.
I can't play pushers, or I don't like playing at 8 a.m, or, and then, it's all about exposure, not avoidance, to whatever's frustrating them. And then
Yes,
that's key. We want to make sure
that's
we're
key.
actually tackling that instead of
Yes.
avoiding it.
Yeah, I can't remember which chapter it was, but I think that's the title of one of the chapters. Not avoidance, but exposure. And then so like you said, identifying what is that frustration trigger. You say intermediate athletes with low frustration tolerance may give up on challenging tasks quickly. The mere thought of everything not going their way may feel unbearable. They may get angry, lose control, or avoid tough tasks altogether. Low frustration tolerance can take a severe toll on their long-term outcome goals and relationships. That's good stuff.
Yeah. And that's a big statement too. And we are trying to teach the athletes life skills, right?
Mm.
And communication skills, because that's what's going to help them play college ball.
Mhm.
A big key to college coaches actually giving them a scholarship is based on life skills.
That's
It's
right.
not just who can hit a topspin backhand, right?
Right, right.
Kids that have great topspin backhands, but are jerks, they don't get the gig, right? So
Right. That's
life skills is big. Um,
it's the whole package, right? I mean,
it kind of is, and that's kind
you're
of,
not just selling your forehand. Yeah.
yeah. And parents, look, this is your job description. When parents want to be involved, and they should be involved, they deserve
Mhm.
to be involved, but they have to know what their job is. And their job is not typically to teach, slice backhands and kick serves. Their job is to teach life skills. It's
right.
way more important.
Right, right. In the solution of this section, you say parents should ask their athletes to peek into the future at all the winnable matches they will likely lose with this poor behavior. That's great. Again, just laying it out there, and meeting a challenge head on. And that's a scary spot, but incredibly necessary.
And isn't it funny that parents, you know this, but when you have kids, they're born with certain personality profiles, right?
Mhm.
Some are very patient, some are impatient, some have great frustration tolerance,
Mhm.
and some are just natural born worriers. If it's just, if the wind blows a little bit wrong, they start getting upset.
Right,
And so
right.
we got to identify that. And I think it's always wise to ask your athlete to, I guess, problem solve for themselves, be accountable. So Google these topics, Google anything that they feel is difficult. You can Google frustration tolerance, and there's, even on YouTube, there's just 1,000 different people teaching how to handle frustration.
Yeah.
Obviously, yeah, right. And some are great and some are kind of wacky, but that's the fun of it.
Yeah. You go on in this solution of this section to say, as players progress, they'll be competing against better opponents, meeting better hitting partners, better doubles partners, different coaches, and college teammates. And a low frustration tolerance levels will affect these relationships, if not stop them before they even begin. And you go on to say, in the eyes of a college tennis coach, this poor behavior is a major red flag. that stops the recruiting process dead in its tracks. And so that's just a great wrap up right there.
Yeah.
It-
Isn't it? It's contagious, isn't it? When if you look at a team atmosphere,
Mhm.
if somebody has that kind of low frustration tolerance and they're getting pissed off about every little thing, that affects everybody around them, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Anyway,
I mean, I remember a doubles partner, a mixed doubles partner that I had, and great player. We played well together. Our playing styles really meshed. We do kind of each other's tendencies, and uh, but he would get so down on himself, not down on me, but down on himself and hard on himself, and kind of stomp around a little bit. And it made me so uncomfortable. And
yeah,
now our energy is not in sync at all, and
yeah,
I'm kind of walking on eggshells a little bit. And it is hard. So especially, the dynamics between doubles partners or players and coaches or players and teammates, that frustration level, it's part of your identity as a person
yeah,
and as a player. If
yeah,
you go, oh, that guy, he gets so mad, if you can get him cranked up, you're good. Kind of a
right. And
it's
isn't it true too that we see this often parents and athletes say we need to get more up matches or better matches, and those stronger competitors are not going to play with a negative Nancy.
right.
They're like, I don't want to be around here.
Yeah.
Even if you have a great game,
Right.
they'll veto it. So anyway,
Absolutely.
that's an important chapter. I think I'm very proud of myself, for that one. I thought
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So the next section, so the first section was understanding frustration. And then so this section is managing frustration. So after we've identified and sort of understand what's happening, then we need to manage it. And you say taming anger and frustration can be challenging, especially if you and your athlete believe competitive tennis should be fair. Tennis often isn't fair. When faced with an opponent who makes bad calls, is your athlete able to manage the situation with maturity? Does the 1 point drama spiral into 20 minutes of unfocused frustration? So again, bringing this point up, it's the natural thing. If we identify it, we're starting to understand it. Now, what do we do? What do we do with it? How do we manage it?
Yeah.
You have an analogy here about a poisonous snake that bites you. And did you die from the bite? The answer is no. The venom basically is what kills you. But so let's talk about this idea of taming anger and frustration. That's how you start this section. And that idea of thinking that competitive tennis should be fair, and it is often not fair. And that could be, like you were just saying before, what time of day, you don't like playing at 8 a.m, or
yes.
all the different things that, the wind is blowing which way. But
yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about how to face that opponent. So again, it goes back to a theme of handling adversity, and it goes right into, do you just get frustrated right away, and what do you do with that frustration? So talk a little bit, tell us about how managing frustration. You say it starts with monitoring it. Makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it's important too for parents that have these conversations with their athletes. And one of the conversations is what is really in your control. And we know that the outcome of matches is not 100% in your control. Right. They can influence the outcome, but you don't have control over who you play in the draw. You might have to play the number 1 seed first round.
Right.
And that makes a difference. You could play 3 toads in a row. Now you're in the semifinals. Right. And there's luck too. There's positive luck that goes into this. But I think a big key, though, that we have to kind of educate the parents to talk to their kids about is that we all have mental habits, not just stroke motor program habits, like a bad toss on their serve or something, but we all have mental habits. And we have to figure out what are our negative mental habits. And then we have to give ourselves permission that it's going to take a little bit of time to, deconstruct those mental habits. So one of them might be, the nickname with sports psychology is ANTS, so automatic negative thoughts. Okay. Start with spotting how many times your athlete has ANTS in a match, a practice match or a real match. So parents can chart this. They can just use their phone and take notes. Okay, my kid had negative automatic responses 14 times in this match. And now we have to start to obviously take that number and reduce it, right?
Yep. You say in the solution part of this section, when temper flares, ask your child to replace focusing on the problem with focusing on the solution. And so, like you said, that training the mind and people will respond to it differently depending on their personality profile and tendencies in the reactions. Like you said, what is that automatic response? Like a default setting. Like what is your default setting?
Yes.
How do we reboot it?
Yeah, right on.
So this takes us into the next section, which is desensitizing. Sorry, that was a tough one to say. Desensitizing to hardships.
Oh, yes.
And again, this in the bigger picture of life skills is so huge. Being sensitive is important in some ways, but we also don't need sensitivity to then become a hindrance.
Yeah.
So that's sort of, when I read this, the desensitizing to hardships, I was like, ooh, yeah, that's good. And you say the ugly truth is that there's unfair scheduling, gamesmanship, jealousy, and pettiness in the junior tennis scene, and parents and players need to be desensitized to it. That's big. That's really big.
Yes, it's a really different mindset that the top players have. And look, even as adults, we're wired to seek what's comfortable. We want a comfortable home, right? A comfortable car, all that stuff. Top athletes, they're not seeking comfort. They seek discomfort, right? Because they know that that's where growth lives, and that's part of this being desensitized to hardship. Is they're walking towards hardship instead of avoiding it.
Yep.
And everybody's different, right? So we have to the answers are customized to you guys. Everybody has their own versions of what's difficult.
You say developing thick skin in and around tournament competition is a life skill worth educating. So speaking to the parents, that the developing thick skin in and around tournament competition is a life skill worth educating. How might a parent go about instilling this in their child?
Well, great question. I think one of the biggest keys is that we have to get our athletes to just walk into tournaments, understanding that they're not going to control everything. Things are not going to be perfect. They're just walking into that environment trying to be excellent, not perfect. That's big right off the bat. Their role in tournaments is twofold. It's one, to simply play at their peak performance level, no matter the outcome. Are they hitting their performance goals? preset performance goals with their coaches.
Right.
It could be as simple as, right, okay, I want you to see if you can get 50% first serves in.
Right.
Or when you get short balls, use your approach shots, things like that. Those are performance goals, right?
Yep.
It's meaningful. And we want our kids to have this wonderful trait of, stronger frustration tolerance. That's how they're going to handle the world later anyway. So
Exactly.
handling it and parents from your side, one of the keys is don't be a helicopter parent and solve all their problems for them.
Right.
I was at a tournament last week, and I think I asked the 14-year-old girl, I asked this young lady probably 10 questions. The dad interrupted and answered all 10. And
Wow.
you know how that is. So he's teaching her that she's not capable of solving her own problems.
Right.
And that's probably not a great way to desensitize her to hardships, right?
Right. Right. In the solution section, you say, if a bit of maturity and confidence is what your athlete needs, enroll them in other competitive sports. When I read that, it really stopped me for a minute, and I was like, I am so glad that you said this. It's so true. And I don't think it's emphasized enough. We could talk for ages about early specialization, and it can lead to the overuse injuries and burnout and all those things. But I love that you say, enroll them in, do another sport. Get that exposure. I mean, it's great. You say playing different sports exposes and helps develop the mental toughness, athleticism, life skills, and character traits junior tennis players need. And that's just, it's so true.
I really do. But I also, I believe in that. But I also believe in the idea that sports exposes poor life skills, which then then you improve. So it's not like it's not a miracle cure that it's going to develop all your life skills. And I want to make sure parents don't have that false sense of security that just because they put their kid on a soccer team that they're going to have great life skills.
Right.
But I mean, this is part of it's very difficult to have a world-class champion in anything. And it takes a lot of work from the parents. So parents, it's meaningful that you understand that if you want your child not to be a hobbyist in tennis, you cannot be a hobbyist as a tennis parent. It's almost like a full-time job for your kid to be a nationally ranked player, because you are in the car early mornings, late at night, every weekend. It's not easy to be a parent of a high-performance player.
No, it's not.
It'd be in your best interest to find other parents, though, that have done it before.
Yes.
Right? Like role models. You want to get mentors.
Yep.
Because they can help so much. Definitely.
It's a hard journey. And it's even harder if you try to go it alone. We all need a little help.
Yeah.
You say athletes need exposure, not avoidance, when it comes to finding solutions under fire. Sports bring hardship before the trophies. Being a multi-sport athlete desensitizes your athlete to the dramas found in competition. That is such a great sentence. Being a multi-sport athlete desensitizes your athlete to the dramas found in competition. Yeah, because there's going to be drama.
Hey, do you remember when we did, there was a Davis Cup there, I think in Birmingham, a couple years ago, and behind the tennis bleachers, there was a basketball hoop, and I was back there one morning, and the tennis players were shooting hoops. So this is like Stevie Johnson and Query and Johnny Isner. And it was a fun event. I appreciate it that you invited me down, because two of those players were kids I taught. So I taught Query and Johnson. So it was a fun Davis Cup for me. But anyway, so back behind the bleachers, these guys were all shooting three-pointers and dunking. And they're amazing athletes, and not just tennis.
Right, right. I remember, gosh, this is in the 90 something, but it was during the US Open, and they had Agassi. This is when the Mets field, Shea Stadium, was still right there. It's no longer there, but so we go over, and they're playing like home run derby. And Agassi is just like, I mean, I don't remember who was pitching or whatever, but Agassi was just ripping, over in the baseball field, over in the Shea Stadium. And it was just one of the coolest things, which is interesting, as because they're closer to you, but his son is a great baseball player.
Yes.
Does he play for USC? One of those?
Yeah, I think so.
I think he does. Yeah, and so it just reminded me of watching the guys in Agassi playing home run derby. It was like there was rain, so there was no tennis, so they were all playing baseball and Shea.
They're competitive people, aren't they?
Yes, and that also too, we talk about confidence, and so you can gain confidence when you're playing another sport. And again, giving yourself notice that I am an athlete, I can do these things, appreciation of whatever innate ability there is, and then how you know how to use your athleticism. So I think it can be so important to the psyche, to be able to do that, shoot some hoops, go, swing the bat, have some.
Yeah, right. That leads to the idea that tennis parents can really, really help develop general athleticism.
Yes.
Right, because that's lacking big time in tennis now. Absolutely. Most kids get so locked into tennis academies and clinics, and they're not really great athletes.
That's right.
And so developing athleticism,
having that foundation is incredibly important. I mean, health wise, like we mentioned earlier, doing one thing, it's like going back to baseball. I think they have a limit on how many pitches a youth player can.
Yes.
Like, did they have like a number of pitches rule or something? And it's because you do need to develop as a full athlete, not just a tennis specific athlete, which is also important, but you can't have one without the other and be successful. A really, really important point there, to bring in the playing other sports, getting that other experience. And it only makes things better. So the next section is, did you win? You say parents need to replace an outcome obsession with improvement questions like, did you perform well today? Yeah, I mean, if a kid's getting in the car after practice, and whether it was practice sets or practice matches, like you say in the book, did you win? Let's replace that question with, how'd you play?
Yes.
It doesn't have to be hard. It just takes a little bit of, again, training, thinking as the parent and the child. So
yes,
hand in hand.
To me, a really smart question for parents is to say, teach me what you learned today. Because you know that this is like a 2,000-year-old quote, but that what you teach, you learn.
Mm-hmm.
And so having the junior tennis player hop in the car and before they can put their headphones on or start doing their texting and all, they have to teach you 3 things they learned today. And that helps them to digest it and remember it, right? Mm-hmm. So teach me what you learned. That's way better, I think, than did you win?
Right. And the open-endedness of the question. And so the player has to actually think a little bit and respond.
Yes.
You
And
know,
there's the
it's not,
communication skills
yeah,
that's
you know, it's
massive,
not
right?
like I'm on the phone and yeah, it was fine. I won to so and so, then I played so and so. You know, da, da, da. Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
it's like they have to, you know, actually think a little bit to answer that question, which is also good training for that mental part. You know, raising awareness,
Yeah.
and getting those default settings. So you say exchange the did you win question with performance-based inquiries. You say practice sets are learning tools to strengthen your athlete's match play skills and identify those skills that are not ready for prime time. You know, that's a great sentence. And I love the not ready for prime time throwback to SNL, you know, Saturday Night
Yes.
when
That's
they
what
would
I was thinking.
yeah, that's so great. Yeah. You know, in the opening credits, you know, they say that the not ready for time, you know, prime time players. That's hilarious. So I loved that little quip there. So last section of this chapter, kind of wrapping it up again, I've really liked this chapter and we've been kind of leading up to this, and so here we go right at it. The last section is perfectionism. You say research shows that perfectionism is a precursor of anxiety, stress, and even depression. 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
So consistent perfectionism and competition brings a circle of performance anxieties as the athlete judges every performance aspect. That's hard to kind of wrap your head around, but you say, you know, seasons change, night follows day. So I love how you kind of bring it back in. It's a huge thing, and then we go, okay, what are we going to do? You go on to say, if you and your athlete are going to chase a sport to the top, those dreams come with breathtaking highs and devastating lows. It's so true. It's so true. So getting into that psyche of having to be perfect, you want everything to be perfect. And we see that on and off the tennis court, of course.
Yeah. Parents, you see it in just one day at a tournament. You have the highs and lows, right?
Yep. Yeah, there's you know, after the initial sending out of all the first rounds, you know, you're going to see a lot of tears in a couple hours.
Yeah.
And so this in the book is the solution here. You say, ask your athlete to Google the definition of perfectionism. As your athlete researches perfectionism, they will soon uncover its toxic negative energy. And so that goes back to what you were saying about the ants. And to again identify that in yourself or your child, that's a pretty big deal, you know, to understand.
It is for sure. It takes a lot of communication. I think it's important though with parents and good athletes that we talked about. Your goal is not so much winning every match on the weekend, but your goal is to be a lot better than you were a week ago. Right? So you've heard it. We've all heard it, right? The idea that your job is to, you know, defeat the opponent you were last week. And that's what the parent should be talking about. Understanding, I think too, that it's absolutely essential that they just try to play excellent, not perfect.
Right.
They allow the little wiggle room, especially if you're a disruptor. Like grinders, they don't care about hitting winners. They just want to make the other person self-destruct. But if you're more of a disruptive tennis player, you are going to make errors. But you only need to win. You know, if you're winning 2 out of 3 points, 66%, that's going to win every match you play.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I mean, when you look at the stats of, Nadal, Djokovic, Federer, Murray,
Yes.
their winning percentages are, 55% is high.
Yeah.
As far as, the percentage winning. I mean, all you have to do is 51% or better. And most of their matches are in that early to mid 50% frame, which I don't think people realize, it's fun to watch highlight reels. It's fun to see all the great things, like those montages of this point, this point, and this point, and it's kind of like, be careful when your youth player, when your young athlete is watching those going, there were a whole lot of points in between those highlights. There were double faults or missed returns or, a blown volley that you should have put away. But it's not just the highlight reel.
Yeah.
They don't do a low light reel.
Yeah. They don't do it.
There's not
environment plays a big role. What we were seeing here too is this, obviously the new great phenom, Alcaraz in the clay courts a couple of weeks ago was absolutely phenomenal at drop shots. Well, now all the kids in Southern California have drop shot-itis. And so, we're on hard courts and they're all drop shotting from behind the baseline.
Oh, no.
Well, Alcaraz does it. So yeah, they do copy what they see on TV, but that's good and bad. But oh, hey, one thing I wanted to mention, and for the parents to understand though too, that a lot of these solutions come in the forms of practice matches, which are dress rehearsals, right?
Yes.
I was talking to an actress, because here in LA we have a lot of them, and she told me that when she used to do Broadway, she would have to do dress rehearsals of the exact performance and her scripts and stuff. She would do dress rehearsals, and I think she said 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, for 8 weeks straight before they run the real show. And that's a lot of hours of dress rehearsals.
That is a lot of hours.
Gosh. But a lot of junior players totally avoid practice matches like the plague. And then they wonder why they mismanage their tournament competition. And so parents, try to replace some of the typical hours of just grooving and rallying back and forth with your child's practice matches, and you'll see great results, I think, from that.
Absolutely. It's such an important point. So it goes right along with what you just said. You say, develop your athlete to expect excellence and leave perfect alone. There's a mantra out there that, it's progress, not perfection.
That's good. I like it.
Yeah, that's a good one to kind of keep in mind, progress, not perfection. You say, teach your children that 2 steps forward and 1 step back is a common progression for a competitive athlete. Ask your athletes to accept the cycles of progress and leave the performance anxieties to their opponents.
That's great. I like that. I'm glad I said that.
Yeah. Well said there. Well said.
I think that's important though too, for parents to understand the 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Your child does not have a fully formed brain yet.
Right.
They're going to act like a kid once in a while. They're going to forget the last $2,000 worth of lessons that you paid for, and they're going to act like a total nut, and they're going to blow easy matches. And typically it's right after they beat a top seed the very next round, because they're already satisfied, that you'll see they'll kind of fall apart a little bit. But just expect that 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and you'll be okay with it.
Yep. And it's an idea we've touched on before, that the idea of the growth cycle and where the comfort zone is, and then that fear you know, when you get right outside the comfort zone, but then
Yeah.
addressing those things, then comes mastery and then management. I think that was last chapter, but I loved that it was the bullseye, like an archer's bullseye.
Oh yeah.
The outer
This
ring.
is good stuff. I'm gonna buy this book.
This is a great book right here.
No, parents, I'm kidding. You don't tease.
And this last part, it reminded me, and I've mentioned it before because it's one of my favorite poems, but Rudyard Kipling's If. And so over the entrance and Wimbledon is a quote from that poem. It's actually a pretty long poem, but it's fantastic. But it says, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same. And I love the, triumph and disaster, treat those two imposters just the same. Because week to week, day to day,
yeah.
Once you get that triumph, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be letdowns and failures and,
Isn't that funny?
And if you have a disastrous match, I've played a disastrous match, and, you just, you talk about frustration tolerance.
Yeah.
That also means that doesn't mean that you're going to be having disaster matches all the time. Again, it's so anyway, I just think it's pretty cool that
to me that I know that's chapter 9, but it brings me a little bit back to the first chapter about winning doesn't really bring happiness. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But so I don't even remember what the quote was that I had in that beginning, but I think it's important for parents to understand that as soon as your athlete goes up a level, whether it's like a UTR number, now they have a whole new set of challenges. Now the drama just recycles and starts all over again. So don't think you're going to be happy when I get to be a 10 UTR, I'll be happy.
Right.
That doesn't happen, right?
No.
It's a myth.
It is a myth.
But then you're searching to be a 12.
Yeah, and your quote is winning isn't the way to happiness. Happiness is the way to winning.
That was it. Yes,
that's chapter 1, nurturing happiness, which was the beautiful place to start the book in this journey. So yeah, chapter 9.
Thank you.
This is really, really great stuff. Again, for those of you, if you're just joining us, we are going through The Psychology of Tennis Parenting by our dear friend Frank Giampaolo. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Thank you for your time. We look forward to chapter 10.
Yeah, beautiful. And parents, keep on reaching out. We appreciate it.
Yes, definitely. All right. We'll see y'all next time.